Good morning, YouTubers. John Gilkison here. It is Wednesday, July 15th, 2026. Recently, we just got back from a trip to Gainesville, Texas, from our home in Radium Springs, New Mexico. And then we came back. We went the southern route through Texas, and then we went the northern route through Oklahoma and back home through Amarillo. And we drove a total of 1,571.9 miles in our new to us 2024 Ford Lightning Flash, which now, because of the trip, has 29,000 miles on it. I did an extensive data sheet on all the charging stops. This is it. I don't want to go through the whole thing in great detail, but I want to tell you about the overall trip and some significant problems and a few stops. The first leg of the journey was ill-advised. We left at 6 in the morning and still didn't get to our motel room till 12:30 in the morning the following day. So we were on the road over 19 hours. Incredibly stupid. We should have gotten a motel room about halfway there. But anyway, we did it, and we thought better of it. And on the way back, we stopped in Amarillo, Texas, and had a motel room there, and then came home the next day. Also, when you're going east, you lose an hour because you cross a time zone where your clock moves forward 1 hour. You don't, of course, lose anything on the total time you're traveling, but that's why I left at 6 in the morning. And then coming back, you gain an hour, so it appears like you get home earlier. It's a around the world in 80 days kind of phenomenon. Our first stop was El Paso, and the only reason I stopped there, I didn't have a lot of charging to do there, but we knew we had to go all the way to Van Horn, and I didn't want to spend inordinate amount of time at any charger, but that's what ended up happening anyway for other reasons. So basically, I just did a splash and dash in El Paso back up to 80% and then went to Van Horn. And in Van Horn, we got an Electrify America charger, and it worked straight up, and we were on our way. Now, our plan was to stop in Pecos. There's a Sonic there with Electrify America chargers, and we were going to eat lunch at the Sonic drive up, and then we were, going to be charging while we were eating and go. Well, that didn't happen. I'd ordered the food before I started charging. And then when I tried to start the charging, it turned out Electrify America had shut down not only that station, but a couple of others in that part of Texas. So we no longer had Electrify America chargers. And they just shut them down for service. And the app told you the damn thing was open. And I was pissed about that. And apparently, I was sitting there looking at the charger, and it says, available on the app, and it's got a blank screen. You call them up. No, we've shut it down. And so we had to go on, and we found a charger in Odessa, a GM charger. It's the first time I'd used one. So when we finally got there, we had 20 or so minutes just to get the thing fired up. We had to call them, and you're sitting out there, hot day, the wind blowing, diesel trucks rolling all around you, all kinds of noise. You can hardly hear on the phone. And we finally got through and got it done. and sat in the vehicle and charged, and went in the store, of course, and bought some knickknacks and went to the restroom and so forth. Then we went on from Odessa to Colorado City to an FE charger. No problems there. Now, the thing about the GM chargers I'm just talking about, we had, it was one of the highest rates. We didn't have a lot of charging to do, but enough to rack up $58.12 worth of charges. And that's because the damn charger was charging like 69 cents kilowatt hour. So I really didn't want to use them again. But I ended up having to use another one on the route, which was even worse. So we went to Colorado City. And we were, what the heck? What is this? Yeah, in Colorado City, we had to do 64 kilowatt hours of charging. And the thing about this is all in this part of Texas out there, not where we were then, but earlier, there's a whole hundreds of miles where you can do 80 miles an hour. I decided to go ahead and do it. I wanted to do the speed limit simply to go as fast as I could legally go so we could get there. Because we knew we had a long day ahead of us. Unfortunately, we did, because it would have been even worse. We wouldn't have got to our motel room at 3 in the morning if we'd have been doing 70. And so Colorado City, $42.38, a cheaper rate, but more charging, more kilowatt hours than we did at the GM charger. And then we went to Eastland, where we had an Electrify America, and it was even more kilowatt hours than the last one. But this Electrify America only cost us $35.77 versus $42.38 at the last charger, and we at the FA charger. So FE charger, we didn't, and that's just because of the cheaper rate per kilowatt hour. And I'm going to, in the summary of the whole trip, I want to go over this kilowatt hour charge. It's a killer. So after Eastland, we made it to Gainesville, as I said, 12:30 in the morning at our motel room. Got checked in, got to bed as soon as we could, and got up at 7 in the morning so we could eat a breakfast, such as it was, a continental breakfast, and Super 8 there. And then we were there to look at a fifth wheel hitch that you tow behind your vehicle. That's a whole nother video, but the damn thing is beautiful, beautifully built, rugged. It's an answer to our problems, but the thing costs $20,000. And it doesn't look like we can do that right now, because our creditworthiness is taking a bit of a hit just buying the truck, as you can imagine. Plus, we have a bit too much debt on some of our credit cards, and we need to pay those down. That's personal history. So anyway, yeah, the trip was worth it. So then the next day after that, we charged in Gainesville, and I charged at a Tesla charger. And again, Teslas were the most reasonably priced per kilowatt hour. And I'm not giving you exact figures here, but in Gainesville, we put in 55 kilowatt hours and only spent less than $30. So then we went on to Norman, Oklahoma, and I was meeting my nephew there, who I haven't seen in a decade or more, to show him the new truck. And this we did, and we charged at Ardmore Walmart, and it only cost us $27 for 52 kilowatt hours. Then we went on to Norman, Oklahoma, where we ran into another Tesla charger, which was really an FE charger. And we only spent $24 there, because, again, Tesla chargers are cheaper than Electrify America, and Electrify America is cheaper than the GM chargers. But after Norman, Oklahoma, we went to Elk City, and Google Maps had directed us there, and there's some chargers there, some FE chargers, it said, and we trusted it. And when we got there, we were down to like 41 miles of range on the truck, and both chargers were corded up together and stuck aside, and there was a big dirt lot, and they were grading and stuff, and a chain link fence all around. And I spoke to some people there, and I said, yeah, we take this stuff down, and we tell Google Maps that we've done this, but they don't post it for a week or two. And well, that wasn't helpful. We had 31 miles to go to the next charger and only 41 miles of range and 19-mile-an-hour headwinds. So we set out on the interstate at 50 miles an hour and off to the side, one wheel along the side of the road with our flashers going so people could go by us, and because that's dangerous. But before we even got to, we were trying to get to Sayre, and before we got there, there was a sign along the interstate that said EV charger next exit. I said, well, shit, I've never seen one of those before. And we pulled off, sure enough, there was a GM charger there. I guess GM paid for these signs. But anyway, we charged there, and that was the most expensive charge of the whole trip. We spent, for 106 kilowatt hours, we spent $74. But fortunately, we got to eat lunch there. I mean, we're talking pizza and wings and stuff. And we sat in the vehicle, and there was a canopy over our head, and there was long pole window washers. All EV chargers ought to have that. But it shouldn't cost 79 cents a kilowatt hour to get it. That's just ridiculous. So we went on to Amarillo, and I stopped in Amarillo on the east side of town briefly just to pad the charging bank in my car. I had a Tesla charger, which, as I've been saying, are cheaper. So then we went on to our room, checked in, and then we went out to dinner. And then we went to an Electrify America charger at a Sam's Club there and topped off to 80% before we went back to our room for the night. So all total in Amarillo, we spent almost $46 to charge up. Then the next day, we were going to drive south to Palo Duro State Park Canyon and then check this route out. We'd rented a house there in October. We wanted to check the route out. And I'm calling a Ford dealership in Clovis, New Mexico about their charger. Because that's it. I mean, now if I'm in Clovis, New Mexico, and their charger is not available or not up, it's a no bueno. We can't make the trip without a big pucker, because we have to get to Roswell if we can't charge in Clovis, and it's kind of a bit too far. So anyway, I couldn't get a hold of them that night, and I said, I'll call the next morning. Called the next morning, no answer. All three departments. We're not going that way. We're going to go where we know where the chargers are. So we went west to Tucumcari, New Mexico. When we crossed the border, we got that hour back on the clock. And then we charged there, and it was almost $28 for 58 plus kilowatt hours. And then after that, we went to Santa Rosa. In Santa Rosa, we only got 35 kilowatt hours roughly for a little over $19. And then the last charger was Corazoso, New Mexico, 48 kilowatt hours for just a hair under $30, and then we drove on home. Those are the two secrets. Is number one, you have to charge to 100% when you leave on a trip, and when you get home, you should be home with a low battery. That way, you can charge cheaply at home. You're charging cheaply before you leave, and you charge cheaply at home, and that cuts the price down. Now, our average still was 52 cents a kilowatt hour on the road when you added it all up. And we drove 1,571.9 miles, as I indicated, and we used 867 kilowatt hours of electricity to do it. And we averaged 61.12 miles per gallon. Or we averaged 1.813 miles per kilowatt hour. So, and our total spending was $451.39. And well, that's not bad. If I drove my 18 mile per gallon gas truck, that trip would have only cost me $350. So basically, the whole trip, 1,500 miles, cost me $100 more. So it's about 20 or 30% more expensive to charge on the road than it is to throw gasoline in a truck at today's gasoline prices. And I think this is ridiculous. I figured it out that right now, the price per kilowatt hour for traveling charges would have to be 39 cents, roughly, per kilowatt hour to equal gas. And that's what it should be. If you can avoid these GM chargers, I'd do it. Just way too boutique of a electroline. And Tesla's really good, but you can't always find them. And Electrify America is really good on prices too, but then they're sometimes don't work. you have problems. These FE chargers seem to work pretty reliably too, but they're a little bit more expensive than Electrify America. It depends. Sometimes they're not. And the prices are there on the app, but they're not out front. And you have a tendency when you're traveling to look at your range and can I get there? Is the charger going to work? You're concerned about all these things, and then prices takes a back seat. And it shouldn't. You should have prices foremost in your mind. And I think all chargers ought to have a price posted on the charger. Just you go to a gas station, there's a giant sign up there. It says $4 a gallon, $3.50 a gallon, whatever it says. And when you get to a charger, there's nothing there that says that, not in large print. And there ought to be, and there's not. And they don't want you to, they're not hiding it, but they're not displaying it prominently. The other thing is we just didn't have any destination charging while we were there. We couldn't charge at our motel rooms. We couldn't do anything to cut the cost. And if we'd have been visiting friends and relatives, maybe we could have. But I've found destination charging at motels kind of hard to come by. They don't seem to have any interest in it. And I ran into one in Phoenix, for example. When I got there, they had a charger, and then they were tearing it out, and they were going to put in a new charger. And oh, that sounds great. And the next day I went to use it, and they wanted a $50 hold fee on my account, and they were gigging me for kilowatt hour chargers that were as much as the damn DC fast chargers down the road. I said, you people crazy? They don't seem to understand the difference between DC fast charging and level 2 charging, and want to charge nearly the same for it. No way. That's ridiculous. And they just totally ruined the experience. I told them I would never stay at one of their motels again. It was a Marriott. Because they had a third party involved, and then they want their part of the profit, and the Marriott wants their part of the profit, and they don't want to make it a service anymore, and it's ridiculous. And then you get level 2 charging. It's only like 5.6 kilowatt hours. It's not even enough to you can get your car charged overnight. If You plug it in for 12 goddamn hours. The ought to minimum be 7.2, 32 amps. That's doable on a 40 amp breaker. So, charging's a mess. There's no doubt about it. 80% of your driving is locally. You're charging at home overnight at a very cheap rate. And we've calculated, as I did in my last video, that I'm going to be saving over $40,000 on both vehicles. I'm going to be saving damn near like $28,000 just on the truck alone over the next 10 years. These savings are just incredible, but not while you're traveling. So you need your eyes open about that. If you're buying an electric vehicle and you can't charge at home, you've made a big mistake, because it's literally going to cost you more than it is going to be to buy gasoline. And that's not the way it should be, because your car is 3.5 times more efficient. So why are we charging? I understand that these DC fast chargers are very expensive to put in, but they should be subsidized by the government. The rates ought to be, by law, mandated to be no higher than 40 cents a kilowatt hour. And if it takes subsidies to make up the difference, then so be it. But that's what ought to happen. Of course, that's not going to happen under the Trump administration. But Trump ain't going to be around forever. I don't think MAGA is either. Maybe even this November we'll see some pretty big hints of that. So I'm going to let you go here. We enjoyed the trip. The truck is just fantastic. Rides like a dream. Accelerates like crazy when you need it to. Charges fairly fast, considering it only has 400 volt architecture. And it's a big battery too. So for the size of the battery, one of the keys is, if you can do it, if you got regular stops, only charge to 70% and try not to go down below 20%. That's half the battery you're charging then, and that's plenty. And you can get there fast because the charging curve starts to drop off after 70% for sure. 80%. We had occasions where we went to 85% just because of the charging infrastructure out there. It was too far to the next one, so forth, and we needed room in the battery in case there was a problem. And we covered it all, but it requires a bit of thinking and planning, and too much for some people. They want to just throw gas in the vehicle and splash and dash, and they're willing to lose, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over a 10-year period driving gas cars. So that's their call, but that's not the route we're going here. And right now, I'm charging my car on solar out there right now. And I only keep track of the cost just for grins. I don't even pay for most of my charging because I have enough solar. So that's the way of the future. It's a lot cheaper, as one wag just put it recently, it's a lot cheaper to move electrons than it is to move atoms. I'll leave you with that thought. Take care. Bye-bye.